All right, guys, so there could be some fireworks coming very soon for the Baltimore Ravens, and maybe even in the draft, which is now 7 days away until the Ravens will be on the clock in the 2025 NFL Draft. We got some breaking news from Ian Rappaport, plus a very interesting statement from Eric DeCosta regarding Mark Andrews, plus star cornerback Jalen Ramsey just became available for trade. Could he be in the mix on draft night? Could the Ravens pull the trigger on a trade? Eric DeCosta said corner is a huge need. Plus, we got the top takeaways from the press conference, from the Liars Luncheon, from John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, and much more, man. So welcome into another episode of Ravens Reports. It's your guy, Noah, here with For the Flock. As always, bringing you guys our top 5 news reports and storylines coming out of our Baltimore Ravens today. First things first, let's talk about Mark Andrews. All right, this was the statement from Eric DeCosta yesterday regarding Mark Andrews.
You have made trades before with veteran players during the draft. Do you fully expect, there's been a lot of speculation about Mark Andrews' future in Baltimore. Do you fully expect him to remain with the team? Is he a big part of what you plan on doing this year?
Oh, man. I never know what's going to happen, Jeff. And I would never want to say this or that, but I can tell you this. Mark Andrews is a warrior, and he's played his butt off for us. And his competitiveness, his talent, his attitude, his leadership is so valued here. And he's a great player. And I think we're in the business of keeping as many great players as we can. So there's always a lot of unpredictability with the draft. You just never know.
So whenever he was asked, do you foresee Mark Andrews being on the roster, he says, oh man, I never know what's going to happen. Mark is a warrior, a great player. We're in the business of keeping great players, but I don't know. How do you start off a direct yes or no question with, oh man, I never know what's going to happen, and then talk about how much you love Mark Andrews, kind of like, lift him up a little bit, but hey, bro, we're about to trade you. I don't know. When I heard that comment from Eric DeCosta, I thought, man, there's a real possibility that Mark Andrews could be traded. Now, not only would it make sense for the logistical aspects of the roster, because Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews will both be free agents, and Isaiah Likely has been an absolute ice-cold killer in those clutch moments. We're talking about big-time touchdowns and playoff moments against the Texans, against the Steelers, 2 years in a row, playoff touchdowns. Then another one on the Buffalo Bills drive, diving catch in the snow. This guy has built serious chemistry with Lamar Jackson and is an absolute playmaking unit. This guy, I think, would easily have 1,000 yards and 10-plus touchdowns if he was the tight end one, the sole tight end on the roster, not competing with snaps for Mark Andrews. Now, I love Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is an absolute dog. However, the reality is they're both going to be free agents next year, and both are going to want big-time tight end one money. Isaiah Likely is about 5 years younger. The Ravens aren't going to be able to pay both of them because they still have to pay Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, and then eventually Zay Flowers. Not only does it make sense to get something in return while you still can, if you could get, maybe you give up a third-round pick in Mark Andrews, and you get a second-round pick, and you get another top draft pick in this class, or maybe you give up a fifth in Mark Andrews, and then you get a third. I don't know what the trade capital would be, but I think it should be more than what people are talking about, because Mark Andrews is an all-pro. Mark Andrews is a top 3, top 5 tight end in the NFL year after year. He's an absolute dog. He's a playmaker. When he's healthy, he's out there making plays. So it's not just the logistical reasons, but then another report came out from Ian Rappaport, the NFL insider, that he would not be surprised if the Ravens moved on from Mark Andrews with an offer they can't refuse. Here's what he had to say.
I wouldn't be surprised, based on what I'm hearing here, Mike, if some team does come in and make an offer the Ravens can't refuse, even though it is very clear Mark Andrews means a lot to them, and they really, really value the person and the player.
So now, an NFL insider saying he wouldn't be surprised to see Mark Andrews moved. Mark Andrews, could he be part of a package, a trade, a big-time move on draft night that would absolutely drop our jaws, like what we saw a few years ago with Marquise Brown? Trading him for a first-round pick. Now, I don't think Mark Andrews would go for a first-round pick. However, he could absolutely go for a second. We're talking about a high-caliber player in Mark Andrews. 5,530 receiving yards and 51 touchdowns in the last 7 seasons with the Baltimore Ravens with a career high of 1,300 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. This last year, he had 11 touchdowns. He's a red zone machine. Would a team like the Patriots that are looking for more weapons to surround their young quarterback in Drake May, or maybe the Dolphins who could trade us Jalen Ramsey in return, you never know. But my point is, there's going to be some teams that would very much appreciate Mark Andrews' services. He's still in the prime of his career. He's 29 years old, and tight ends usually play, really well into their young 30s. At number 2, real quick, just an update. Speaking of weapons for the Baltimore Ravens, one weapon went over 700 receiving yards. Former first-round pick had 9 receiving touchdowns with a breakout year. That's Rashad Bateman. He's looking to expand on that breakout. Our guy Rashad Bateman is putting in that work right now, man. He's putting in that work. We also saw clips of Isaiah Likely putting in work, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, all these key pieces on this offense. Now, trading away a guy like Mark Andrews would open up more targets for a guy like Rashad Bateman, for a guy like Isaiah Likely, for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, Zay Flowers, right? More carries for Derrick Henry. I don't know. There's a lot of weapons, a lot of mouths to feed on this offense, and I don't think trading away Mark Andrews would be the world's worst idea, especially if he's going to walk next year in free agency, because you're not going to be able to pay everyone. Charlie Kohler will also be a free agent, and he's shown flashes whenever he's had an opportunity as well. And number 3, big update on the draft here. Here's how Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh view this draft. Now, he said there's 217 players that they consider draftable, that they see mid-round value. They have 11 draft picks, so they're going to have a lot of swings at that mid-round value. However, he also said they don't think that 11 players that they draft are going to make the roster. So what's that mean? That means that you could trade away capital this year for future drafts, or you could trade away capital for players like a Jalen Ramsey, which we'll talk about, or you could trade away picks to move up. You could give up a third and 2 fourths to maybe get back up in the second or whatever it is. The Ravens don't think that they'll have 11 roster spots because they already have a really good roster. So they don't think 11 guys are going to make the team from this year's draft. That's just the reality of the situation. So could we see the Baltimore Ravens moving up to get their guy in the first round or moving up in the second round? That'll be really fun to watch. I think one major smokescreen that Eric DeCosta threw to us was, hey, we have our guys returning at the edge position. I don't know if you guys heard that part of the press conference, but he said, we got all of our starters coming back. Kyle Van Noy, we got Odafe Owe, we got Tavius Robinson, and, Adisa Isaac and David Ojabo. All of our guys are returning. So, we're not really you're not going to take a top guy. That's kind of how it seemed like he was projecting, which is, to me, could be an indicator that they're targeting a first-round pass rusher like a Donovan Ezeraku, like a Jalen Walker out of Georgia, which I would absolutely love, man. Guy reminds me of Micah Parsons and really explosive, natural pass rusher, like a guy like Mike Green or James Pierce Jr. There's some pass rushers that are very talented that could be available for the Baltimore Ravens at 27 or a little bit earlier if they wanted to trade up. He did say it is a good edge rusher class, so keep your eye out for that position for the Baltimore Ravens. At number 4, one underrated position the Ravens could go in the first round is cornerback, okay? You're going to say, Noah, well, they have Marlon Humphrey, who was a first-round selection. They just drafted Nate Wiggins in the first round last year. But here's what Eric DeCosta had to say on corner. He said it's a big need. He said that. It's a big need, and that's a critical position. He said they break down like Bugattis, right? Bugattis are like these fast, lean, performing beasts. But because they go so hard, they sometimes break down, right? That's what he's likening the cornerback position to, because cornerbacks are the best athletes in the world, right? Having to react to a receiver's route. Receivers are great athletes, but they already know where they're going. The corner's just reacting, right? Corners have to be elite athletes, make up speed, agility, reaction, strength. Man, corners have a hard job in the NFL. But he did say he guarantees we will take a corner in this year's draft. Who will that be? Some names in the first round include Siobhan Revel out of ECU, Jade Barron out of Texas, Benjamin Morrison. There's some other guys that could be in the mix in that first round. Trey Amos. Don't overlook the cornerback position, right? Because I think, in my opinion, they need another outside guy. Marlon Humphrey, they said, John Harbaugh said, I like Marlon in the slot. His best 2 seasons ever, which was last year and then I think 2019, both primarily him starting in the nickel in the slot. He is so good there. So if you got Marlon inside, you got Nate Wiggins on the outside at one spot, you need another guy. There are guys on the roster like Jalen Armour-Davis, like TJ Tampa, like Chidobe Awuzie, right? But are you going to hang your hat on those guys? Do you want to see more depth at those positions? I think the Ravens could add another star outside. I think the Ravens should add another, very talented outside corner, which brings me to at number 5. Jalen Ramsey is available for trade from the Miami Dolphins. Now, would the Ravens have to restructure Lamar and maybe some other guys to make this work on the salary cap? Yes, they would. But if they're going all in, if they want to go and win the Super Bowl this year, which Eric DeCosta said he wants to, Steve Biscotti says, I want to win now. If you guys heard that interview, Jalen Ramsey could be the guy. He's 30 years old now, but look at his grades from last year. Still playing at a high level. He's a lockdown, shutdown corner. And I think he's still probably got 2 years of elite, play left in him. Imagine Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, Jalen Ramsey, Kyle Hamilton, and then maybe a guy like Malachi Starks or something in the draft, man. Could you imagine the no-fly zone the Ravens could build if they added Jalen Ramsey? Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I don't think so. The Ravens typically don't make those type of splashes unless it's for the right. They do make splashes on defense. I'll take that back. They gave up a second-round pick for Roquan Smith. That was a lot of trade capital, and then they paid him like $100 million. They've traded for Marcus Peters, Calais Campbell, a third-round pick for Yannick Ngakoue, right? They've made big splashes on the defensive side before. How much trade capital would it cost to get Jalen Ramsey? Because he has a big contract, maybe it's a little bit less because it would, open up a lot of salary cap for the Dolphins. Could we have a Mark Andrews, Jalen Ramsey type of swap between the two? You never know. But I do think, regardless, whether it's a trade, maybe another free agent, or a top pick in the draft, the Ravens still need more at outside cornerback. One other thought for you guys, one other top takeaway from this draft before we get off of here is Eric DeCosta said that, hey, if a position that's not a position of need falls to us, like a running back or a tight end, right? Because running back, you have Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell. Tight end, right now you have Mark Andrews, as a likely, and Charlie Kohler. Those are really 2 strong position groups. But he said if a tight end or a running back were to fall to us and they're a blue chip prospect and they're so good we have to take them, we'll still take them. Because he said, as you know, needs can change in one season, one game due to injuries. I just had the thought of maybe maybe a really good running back is still there in the second or third round, like a Travion Henderson or one of those guys that the Ravens have really highly graded, or a top tight end. Could they spend a top, 3 pick, first, second, or third round pick on a running back or tight end? If the right guy fell, maybe. I don't really think it'll happen, but imagine, example, right? If Ashton Jeanty, fell somehow to 27 because nobody wants to spend a pick that high on a running back, would the Ravens pull the trigger? I think they'd have to, right? All right, guys, so let me know your reaction to Ian Rappaport's report about Mark Andrews and what Eric DeCosta had to say. Let me know what you think is going to happen with Mark. Will he stay? Will he go? What do you prefer? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Smash the like button if you got any value out of today's content. I love you guys. I appreciate y'all, and we'll see you in the next video.
When he wasn't looking, he ran me over.